Okay, now, so there's trapping is one method of catching possums, and then poisoning is the other main method.
Yep.
So how do they compare, and what are the poisoning methods that people use?
Well, generally in the 70s, there was millions of possums taken out in New Zealand with cyanide. Um, there was cyanide powder to start with. Then they came in with a paste, which was cyanide mixed with a petroleum gel with a lure in it. And a lot of people put out big baits that would kill a lot of possums, and the baits were too big, and they get water on them and they become sublethal. So they educated a lot of possums. I found that if you pre-fed and used a tiny little bait, a match head of cyanide, that would kill 2 or 3 possums, but have your baits fairly close together. They were easy to rub out into the dirt and become non-toxic. And I found if you pre-fed and poisoned for one night and then rubbed out your baits before the cyanide became sublethal just with dews or moisture on it, you didn't make possums poison shy.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but yes, over the years we've had, well, the main poison is 1080 going into New Zealand aerial. It's been going for 40 years. And it has had some pretty good effects in a lot of places, but it only takes 6 years again and your numbers are back to where they were basically. This is, you get me onto another subject here, but you know, they do a 1080 drop and then they monitor, well, they monitor before with traps on the ground, set on GPS readings, and it's a basic thing that they use right throughout New Zealand to keep it the same. And to me, it's stupid because for a start, nobody's looking for sign and putting a trap where the possums are actually moving. And you're basically, you're not looking for sign, which is one of the biggest thing of actually catching traps and of possums. And the other thing is after big poison drops, possums become, the ones that are left become very, very wary. They will not go at anything unusual. Even in areas where a lot of guys are using cyanide and using big baits and not rubbing it out, the possums become so aware they will not go near a flower, lure or anything. They will not. You can see sign and you can put a trap there with some lure and they won't go near it. I found by where these areas was really shy, I was using a oil like a sweet almond oil mixing raspberry oil or whatever with it and spraying it on the tree, and they could smell it but they couldn't see it. So they would come and think, what is that? And you could catch possums. But if you put a visible lure there, they wouldn't go near it. And that is just because the ones that are left after these operations are the ones that are coming, and a lot of them might have had a sublethal dose of poison and they'll never touch it again. So yeah, I've proved it after I've worked areas where they've done big 1080 operations before they plant trees, and they've still had trees eaten, so they've asked me to come in, and I thought, oh look, there's bait stations everywhere. And I think, and I've put out traps and hardly caught a possum, and I think they've done a really good job. But if you set those traps off and leave them there with a runner for 20 days and come back, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Catching possums, because the possums have been inquisitive. They've run up and down them, worked out they're not going to get caught. So they're using, if you put them in the right places, they're using them. That's on their run up there, they come backwards and forwards, and then you set those traps and you catch possums, and you think, wow, where did, you know, and so with the monitoring, the way they do it, what they're monitoring really is how shy possums are.
Yeah, right.
They're not actually monitoring the true number of possums. They keep it that way because if you've had a really bad drop, you'll catch possums that way, and it's consistent. But it's something I've learned by accident, that it's not actually, all you're doing is measuring the shyness of animals, not the actual number that's there. And the big thing of poisoning in New Zealand now is bait stations, you know, that they're everywhere. And same again, they work, but people leave them there for years on end,
Yeah.
and they're facing to the way the weather's coming. When water blows in there and gets on these pellets, on the pellets in them, they get sublethal. The possum picks them up, and if he gets a sublethal dose of poison, he will never ever touch poison again. And they pass it on. They're really clever. And an example is people don't realise, but say when I was poisoning possums with cyanide, and you're skinning the possums and leaving the carcasses in the bush, or even before you skin the possums, the wild pigs used to follow you around and eat these possums. And they'd skin them and eat them, and they were a real pain. But after one 1080 drop, the pigs that come along to eat these possums get secondary poisoning, and most of the pigs up to 120 pound die, but the bigger pigs will often get sick, but there's not enough poison to kill them. And after that, it does not matter. For 10 years, a pig will not eat a possum in that area.
Okay.
They will not eat them. Even if you try and feed them possums, they will not eat them. And they pass it on to their young.
So
even the little pigs won't touch
little
it.
pigs
Will
get
not
taught not to eat
Yeah,
possums.
they get taught not to eat possums.
Interesting.
And possums are the same. If you get sublethal doses, they pass it on. They will not put their head in a bait station again. And that is the trouble. People just top these bait stations up. There's already mouldy shit in the bottom, and if they used really properly, put so that the rain's not going to go in them, put them on really good places, look for sign where there's a tree they're running up, instead of just putting them every 100 or 200 metres on a GPS coordinates so they can find them. It is, to me, it's mainly a lot of guys with very little experience, and they're cheap labour units. You stick them out, they'll do. And I do all my trapping now is basically where there's contractors using bait stations, and I can still catch 1,000 possums a month behind these guys. I can catch more in a lot of places. So where you've got little isolated patches of bush or things, and you do it properly with bait stations, you can knock the possums out of them, you know. But it's 99% of them are not being used, and that it's not the most effective way, I believe. It's, well, as I say, I can make a living, pretty good living, and I'm working in the same areas as these bait stations. They tend to drop the numbers, so you're not catching 20 possums out of a trap, but I can still catch 7 or 8 out of. A lot of the time they put a batten in, they hammer a fence batten in, and they nail a bait station on it, and I come along and I put my runner on that same batten, and I can catch 7 possums sometimes without moving it. And yet the possums aren't touching the bait in there because they're over it. But the other thing that really makes me, there are hundreds, thousands of bait stations left in New Zealand, all through the bush, everywhere, up the sides of creeks. They forget about that light and they come and put another light, and that light gets brittle and they fall off and they end up in creeks, and there's that much plastic being ground down in our waterways from bait stations that are, and it's everywhere. It is mind-boggling. There's hundreds of thousands of them that are falling off trees, and then they come up with another bait station and they try this one, and it's not the most effective way